Well, I've definitely made my childhood dreams come true. I made pickle soup. We're in the test kitchen today and I'm developing a new recipe. I'm making potato leek dill pickle soup with bacon. Okay, I'll admit, it sounds a little bit weird, but if I do it right, I think it's gonna be delicious. I'm also trying my hand again at yet another version of an easy artisan bread loaf so that hopefully by this evening we will have delicious dill pickle soup, yummy, and a nice slice of crusty bread to go along with it. For anyone that knows me, it's not a stretch to imagine that I might try to make everything possible under the sun out of dill pickles. If you think about it, it's not actually that weird. There's all sorts of cucumber soups around the world, and I think, in fact, that Hungary has a dill pickle soup, but I want something that's not as creamy as a traditional potato leek soup and a little bit tangier than some of the cucumber soups that I've seen. I've made this recipe a couple times in the past and haven't completely nailed the amount of brine that I need, but my last test was pretty darn close, so I think we're gonna lock it in today. So hopefully, at the end of the day, we have a potato leek and dill pickle soup that I am proud to share with you all. The first thing we're gonna do though is get started on some artisan bread. And I have been on a quest to improve my bread making skills, which were pretty non-existent as of last year and are getting better by the day. Earlier this morning, I started mixing up some flour, sugar, salt, yeast, and warm water. And that dough has been proofing to the side for a couple of hours now. So before I get started on our soup, I'm gonna turn my attention to this artisan loaf. So it's been a couple of hours for our first proof, and our dough has definitely doubled in size. The recipe that I'm using, which will be copied in the description box below, recommends this stretching technique to form the dough into a ball. So with lightly floured hands, I'm to reach down the side of the bowl, grab from the bottom, stretch over the top, turn it 90, and do the same until it forms a ball. I think the intent here is to do our best not to knock the air out that we've just gotten in through that rise. So to me, that looks pretty good. That was pretty fast. It was like 8 turns. And then the recommendation is to flour a piece of parchment, put it on the parchment, a little bit more flour on top, cover this with a kitchen towel and let it rest and rise a little bit for another 10-ish minutes. And then we're gonna slice a little vent in the top and put it in a preheated 450-degree Dutch oven in the oven. Okay, now it's time to get started on our soup. So the first thing I'm gonna do is trim this 1.5 pounds of bacon into some bite-size-ish pieces. I like to use scissors and I just bunch a couple pieces together and cut it into like inch pieces, the easiest way for me to do it. I'm gonna pull out the crispy bacon and use that as a topper, but we're gonna cook the vegetables and the remaining bacon fat. So my thought behind this soup was that I like potato leek soup a lot. It's one of my favorite soups. It's also sometimes kind of boring. And I was looking through recipes, thinking about what I could add to it, and I find that I'm often missing something that's that kind of tangy, vinegary taste. I like to add that balance in a lot of my soups, and the potato leek soup that I was finding and making was just frankly too creamy. So what I thought I would do is blend this soup, use potatoes and leeks, of course, add a couple carrots for a little bit of sweetness, but then add in some chunks of dill pickle and a little bit of the pickle brine to add that tang that I'm looking for. Right after the holidays, adding a whole bunch of cream to a soup doesn't really sound that exciting to me. So I'm gonna toss in some Greek yogurt, both because it will add the creaminess that we like, it'll add a little bit of that tang, but it also adds some much needed protein to this dish. So the pickles that I'm using today are a local pickle company, Seattle Pickle Company, and they're a nice balance of spices. They're vinegary, but they're not super, super tart like some of the store brand pickles are that you find. But honestly, if we do this right, the pickle brine shouldn't matter all that much. It's the amount of pickle brine that you put in that will become important. And then it's really up to your taste. Some people really don't like pickles, and I don't understand that in the slightest. They're like my favorite food. So I like to bump up the dill and the pickle flavor a lot. But I really want to make an approachable version of this recipe that's just a little bit more nuanced than a typical potato leek soup and isn't like slap you in the face that you're eating a bowl full of pickles, though I would not be opposed to that. Okay, I'm gonna get this bacon rendering down just over a medium heat over on the stove and then start prepping the rest of our veggies. Bacon is starting to smell delicious back there. So next, I'm just gonna chop up some dill. Dill is going on top of the soup as well as in the soup. And this is gonna be a blended soup. That's one of the things I haven't figured out in the past is how much of the pickle to blend in and how much to like top the soup with. I think I'm gonna do a healthy combination of both this time. Dill is minced off to the side. I have here 2 pounds of potatoes. This is about 4 cups. Yeah, about 4 cups of leeks. These are giant leeks. And then these are 150 grams of carrot. I don't want the soup to be orange at all, but I do want some sweetness in the back of the soup. I've tried maple syrup, I've tried honey, I've tried a little bit of sugar. I think carrot is the way to go. I also think that it's a little bit more approachable for people to use a carrot in a soup versus some sort of a sweetener. But like everything else, I really like to balance the salty, the sweet, the tangy, the spicy in all of my dishes, so just a tiny little bit of sweet from the carrot in the background is really nice. So nothing scientific here. I'm just going to chop these up to get cooking in some of that bacon fat. And again, this is all gonna get blitzed up with my immersion blender at the end, so the chunk size doesn't matter all that much here. The leeks I've cut down, and I've used some of the greens, but mostly it's just whites. These are gonna saute for a little while in the bacon fat before we add the potatoes and the carrots. If you're not a fan of leeks or you don't have them on hand, you can absolutely use an onion here, but potato leek soup is a pretty classic combo, so leeks it was for me. So these potatoes then, I'm just gonna cut them down so that I can boil them and they cook up relatively quickly. So chunks that are like an inch or so. And then the only other ingredients in the soup are salt and pepper, some pickles and pickle brine, and a little bit of yogurt right at the end. Again, I'm going for like a little bit of creaminess, but without all the heaviness of heavy cream. I also like the idea that this would be pretty easy to make dairy-free if you wanted to leave the yogurt out or do like the coconut yogurt. Okay, those are chopped up nicely. So the prep for this soup is basically done. I'm gonna move us over to the stove. We're gonna continue rendering the bacon down and then get our leeks cooking. And we'll do most of the rest of this work over at the stove, so I'll see you over there. So the bacon is pretty salty, the dill pickles are salty, and so I want to just be really thoughtful about the amount of salt I add at this point. So no salt yet. I'm gonna add some pepper though. So these are gonna cook for probably 5 to 7 minutes until they start to get a little bit more translucent, break down a little bit. Okay, our leeks are still cooking. But it's time to take the lid off of our bread. Let's see how we're doing. Ooh, look at that baby. Looking good. Okay, back in for another like 20-ish minutes. Okay, it's been about 6-ish minutes and our leeks have cooked down nicely. Now I'm gonna add over the same medium-high heat our potato and carrot. Just gonna get them coated in a little bit of the fat from that bacon, those leeks. Let them cook for just a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna add our dill and our stock. This would be a great use for homemade chicken stock, but I'm using the boxed stuffs today. That was 4 cups, and I have another whole 4 cups of stock that I can use if I need it. But I think this is the right amount to make the creaminess of the soup that I'm looking for. Okay, so now I'm just gonna plunk a lid on this bad boy and cook it until the potatoes and carrots are soft. Soup is still bubbling away, but I do believe that our bread is done. Oh, it looks so good. Okay, I'm gonna let it cool completely and get back to the soup. Our potatoes and carrots are cooked, and now we get to play with pickles and pickle brine and yogurt and additional stock and seasonings until we have a flavor that we like. So the first thing I'm gonna do is temper the yogurt. And so I just need some of this hot stock. So yogurt goes in, just a little bit of hot stock, and we're gonna whisk it together so that the yogurt doesn't curdle. This is a nice replacement for cream in this soup, but if yogurt's too weird for you or too tangy, use cream. Okay, now that the yogurt is nice and smooth and warm enough to go into the soup without curdling, we go straight in. I'm gonna start to blend this. I've got an immersion blender, my burner is on low, and the key to immersion blending is to make sure that the tip of the immersion blender is in the liquid at all times, or else you'll be wearing hot soup. So I put it down toward the bottom and pulse. Okay, I think we're all blended. Now I'm gonna taste. I have not added anything pickle yet, except for some dill. It's a really nice potato leek soup. Kind of boring. So in go a heaping cup of pickles. And I'm gonna blend this again before I add any of the pickle brine or any salt. Definitely needs salt at this point, but I'm gonna blend a little bit more. Pickles are in. I've got some more blending to do, but I wanna taste it and see where we are. I like where this is going. So I reserved a cup of brine here. I'm gonna add about a half of that. I'm going for a half a cup. And we're gonna give it another mix before I salt. I'm so happy with this. I think we have something that I can release to the world. This is amazing. I'm so happy with this. I am gonna add some salt though. Keep in mind we've added no salt, just what was in this pickle brine, and there's actually not a ton of salt in this brine. So salt, I'm gonna add a big pinch. I think this step will depend largely on how salty the brine is that you're using. So I'm gonna have to write that in the recipe. Well, 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 if I haven't made my childhood dreams of pickle soup come true. So, pickle soup. So the difficult part about this recipe is it's gonna vary wildly depending on which pickles you use. So I'll make note of that in the recipe written in the description box below. Okay, before we top our soup, let's get into the bread. By the way, because I didn't update you, that bread is amazing. Nice and crusty on the outside, tender on the inside, very dippable, very spreadable with butter. Highly recommend. I'm starting to get better at bread. Looks pretty good. It's still probably a little bit too warm, even though I let it cool for like an hour. But yummy. Okay, I'm happy with this bread. It's moist on the inside, crusty on the outside. Perfect. Okay, now we need to top our dill pickle soup. I'm gonna start with a little bit of bacon, a little bit of pickle, and some dill. Okay, let's give this soup a taste. I am so happy with myself right now. I've tried this recipe a few different times, and I think the key is the pickle and the brine that you use. A couple times it was too tangy, a couple times it didn't really taste like pickles at all. But this pickle, this Seattle Pickle Company pickle, is perfect. If you can't find this pickle, what I would recommend is something that's not too vinegar forward. So this one is cucumber water, vinegar, salt, sugar, garlic, dill, pepper, mustard seed, celery seed, and coriander, nothing else. So something that you really like the taste of the brine of, but that's not super, super vinegary, that doesn't get you right here too much. This brine is a really nice balance of sweet, salty, tangy, all of those things. So this is a little bit out of the box, but it's not like a novelty food at all. You're not gonna eat it and wanna have one bite and put it away. It's really nicely balanced with salt, sweet, tangy, exactly what you want in a nice, warm, hearty soup. And it's on the healthier side of things with just a little bit of bacon as the topper and some yogurt instead of heavy cream. So overall, I'm happy with this one. It's going in my rotation. I would not hesitate to serve it to guests, and I hope you give it a try as well. Thank you so much for spending your time with me in the test kitchen today while I developed a new recipe. If you liked this video, please give it a like. Please stick around, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and I look forward to seeing you here next time. Cheers!